Oh boy, are we ready? We're recovered.
Boy,
Maybe. I don't know.
I was going to say, I mean, speak for yourself. Yeah, mostly recovered, physically and mentally and emotionally, and massaging my introvert self the last few days. But yeah, we're back from camp. It's May 20th. The year, it's 2025. Welcome aboard, everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 852.
Yeah, a big day already for me. Had a supboard rescue.
Yeah, I saw that, man. All I could do when you text me and you're like, "Hey, we're gonna be a little behind. Got a supboard." I was picturing you in like the David Hasselhoff, because you got a solid set of, got a solid chest and some solid chest hair. I was picturing you running down the beach, chasing after this rogue paddleboard and all the older hens, in the community gawking at you, and you're gonna end up on the Facebook page, the community Facebook page, or e-neighbors. But yeah, then you tell me you use the aqua bike instead, which is probably kind of depressing for the ladies in the community.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're just sitting there on their decks with coffee, watching me. I mean, it's pouring rain, and there's probably 20-mile-an-hour gusts of winds, and it feels like 26 degrees here after a really nice weekend of weather in Nashville. I mean,
we flirted with it. I mean, we went to Nashville. We went in the spring-ish. I mean, I would definitely consider, we went in the spring. And there's a lot more rain, usually, but we did not get any. I mean, we had tremendous weather. June, it's obviously hotter, but less chance of rain. But yeah, we flirted with danger, and we came out on top. Yeah, we had an really awesome weekend, or week-ish, I guess, at camp. I had about 30 of us there in Nashville, which again, I'm from there and born and raised. My whole family lives there. You spent, the greater part of your life, adult life there. And even when I go back and visit my family or come in town for a weekend, we don't usually, go out towards the Trace or Percy Warner or things like that. And every time I go back, now don't get me wrong, I have no desire to live there. I mean, as soon as I cross the Kentucky line to get into Tennessee, it's immediate. My Waze is like
there's new
unusual traffic ahead, 45-minute delay. And you're like, why are you saying unusual traffic? Just say typical Nashville traffic, 45-minute delay. But I always forget how green it is there. So green. And obviously, especially that time of year, right? It's just, everything is green. The hills it really is a beautiful place with a lot of great training locations and opportunities if you kind of know where to look. But no, I thought it was a fantastic week. Had a lot of great people that came in, a lot of people that came in to obviously connect with each other, but also, connect with themselves, via training and work hard. And this group worked hard. But yeah, it was a great weekend, and overall thought it was a really great experience.
Yeah, and you're right, man. I was reminded. I think your allergies reminded you how green it is there.
It sure did.
It's like, man, mine flared too. But yeah, just driving back and forth to the Trace, through Leapers Fork and Brentwood and Franklin areas. It's just so beautiful there. It really is. And I was just remembering that all these, crazy beautiful houses out there, and they're all different, and it's like that old school, let's do something different. Obviously there's pockets of town that have blown up and everything is just kind of cookie cutter and everything like that. But out where we were was just incredible. Some of those lawn, you're a lawn guy, and we were looking at some of those lawns, and I'm like, geez, I bet landscape, or just maintenance is $1,000 a month easy here.
I mean, you feel like, we're not going to talk about lawns the whole time, but I mean, I feel like there had to have been in the last year or two, some kind of an ordinance that basically said, if your grass isn't this shade of green, basically perfect, and you can't walk on it barefoot and feel better about yourself and life, and your lines must be perfect, then I'm sorry, you can't live in Williamson County.
I know.
That's how it seemed. Like everywhere you looked, it was like that. It was really, but yeah, it was beautiful location. Again, if you've never been on the Natchez Trace, we talk about it every year. It is the highlight, I think that in the pool sessions, the highlight of camp. It's hilly, it's challenging. It was hot that first day in the afternoon, and windy, but yeah, just constant rolling hills, perfect pavement, no stoplights, no stop signs. Then you got Percy Warner again, which is, no cars and perfect asphalt and shaded. And it's beautiful there. It's in, again, like you pay the price a little bit because, some of the stuff you do have to drive to, but it's worth the extra mileage to get there. And this group was awarded with some great weather, and they worked really, really hard. But no, I mean, usually I think we guys come back with camps, from camps with takeaways. Sometimes they're, physical and mental or emotional, but, I'm always reminded, you and I've been doing this for such a long time, coaching athletes and doing camps. And it's always it's always a great reminder to, for me as a coach, and to get an eyeball on the athletes, see them in person, and see how people react to certain things, and just how they kind of are in person. Not from like hey, how's your run cadence, and how's your run stride and form. Like, those things are important, but how people carry themselves, how people communicate, facial expressions. It helps you kind of put a face behind the comments and training peaks, and allows you kind of a little deeper insight to some of the context, people provide as they kind of talk about their work stress and life stress. And you mentioned, before we went on air that, it's always interesting to hear people, they come for the hard work and to kind of get away from life. And, we all have things, I leave camp and I always go back to thinking about this bonfire moment. I think the first or second night that I was in treatment, those were sitting around this bonfire with a bunch of total strangers. And it was, I was totally nervous. I was anxious. And there was a preacher in there.
Mm-hmm.
And, which I'm sure, well, most of us shouldn't find that shocking, but, it was, I think, shocking, to some people that there was a preacher in there. He's a minister, but he was kind of young. He was like late 20s. And he kept talking about how, his addiction, his alcoholism was special, and that it shouldn't really apply in X, Y, and Z because of his spirituality and relationship with God. And then I remember one of the first things I ever heard my primary therapist come out of that. He goes, "Hey man, no offense, but you're not special." Mm. He's like, everybody thinks they're special, but he's like, we all have this same disease. We all have this thing we're trying to overcome. Just because you're a preacher doesn't mean you're special, and doesn't mean your work is any different than our work. It's the same. You just have a different occupation. And it wasn't like a rip at his, religious beliefs or anything like that. It was just to say, like, I think we all have this, whether it's, from our ego or pride, or whether it's from our obstacles or trauma. We all kind of think that we're special. Our hardships are harder. Our obstacles are harder. Our life is harder. And then we get into this sport and we kind of figure out, well, I get to make things work for me. It's hard. I'm trying to find out, something different about myself. And you show up to these camps or even races or, things you do with your team and your community. And you kind of realize, like, we're all kind of training. But we're all just kind of using it to help us navigate life and hard times, and just how lonely life can be in general as we transverse, like, everything that there is to do in life, these days, whether it's, constant, sports for your kids, or trips, or work, or your relationship. It's, you have very little time for yourself. And then when you do have time for yourself, a lot of times if you're training for races or in triathlon, like, it's hard to coordinate with someone else because your schedule's so tight. So you do your training by yourself. And so it becomes a very lonely endeavor. And then that lonely endeavor allows us, well, I guess allows maybe isn't the right word, but provides us the opportunity to work through what is we need to work through, or for things to come up that are going to come up. And I think that was one of the things that resonated with me, just talking to quite a few of the campers, was just how lonely it can be where they are, and how little support they feel by doing everything different. So yeah, I thought that it was great, and I think it's a great topic for today.
Yeah, man. Well, you said it's a couple of things. I think it is lonely, but like it's almost like a blessing in a way. I mean, I just think it's like you're saying, like, not special, and like you go through, like, in treatment, you go through so much shit, and you've said it before, where you wouldn't change a thing. It's sort of like this tough journey is the whole thing. You know what I mean? It's like it gives you an opportunity. Like I will go in Training Peaks a lot, and people will say, "Man, oh, it's so hot today," you know, and I went the wrong way and I ran into a bunch of hills, and I'm kind of like, you lucky motherfuckers, you know. You have this like gift almost, you know, and I think I've always thought of hills as gifts. You know, I was so fortunate to start training, I guess, in Nashville and around East Nashville and that, because there's so many hills over. That's where I started running. So, you know, we get in this like, you know, pleasant space and want things to feel easy. And I've been thinking about that a lot. You know, this is never easy. You know what I mean? We train for races and we always want to be prepared, and, you know, and I think at the back of our mind, we kind of think about it as like, if I've trained a ton and I'm really ready for this race, I'm going to be able to cruise through this Ironman or whatever, or I'm going to cruise this 70.3, but it's all relative, because if you're pushing, and every race is hard, and you have a gift in front of you with a hilly area, for example, and I've noticed that up here because it's so flat. It's like the only part of Wisconsin that isn't hilly, basically. And so now I miss hills, and it's this, you know, like hills lift you up, and there's a challenge there in front of you, and you can get stronger with it and all this kind of stuff. And I just think it's beautiful, man. So, yeah, there's like lonely and hard times, but man, that gives you a real good chance to go inside and figure out, you know, you said it's sort of like you train for these races, and everybody in the beginning, you know, hey, I'm doing an Ironman. Oh, wow. And everybody gathers around, and your friends all come out, and then you do another one, and there's not quite as many friends around or family. And then, like, you know, you keep doing the sport, and you find out who's really interested, right? You know, it's like, you do 4 or 5 of these, and then you're really on your own again, you know? So it's almost like a second phase of being alone. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because really we have to kind of figure out why we're really doing this. It's not to do an Ironman. It's really about life and longevity and you know, getting the most out of ourselves and pushing and challenging and getting through these tough times. And that's what it is. And I think that's the learning ground, you know?
And I think it's we get so caught up in, you know, to me sometimes, like when I think about training alone or training with a group, I like, for me specifically, training alone, to me, I get in my own head, or excuse me, I'm able to, like, the best version of me when I go out and run, right, is if I'm not listening to music. Because
get there.
I'm not being, or a podcast, right? I'm not letting what I'm listening to decide the thought patterns that I have. Right. And it's dictating, like, we have this, like, our subconscious, it needs its need and desire and its health really to work through these low level feelings, right? Whether it's anxiety or this pressure, or expectations, or, you know, or loss or grief, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, I mean, you know this, I know this, you know, I had an athlete that texted me that is like, hey, you know, my dog passed away. And you know, we both know how that is. And I just told him, like, listen, dude, it's going to suck. Like, I think it took me like 30 to 45 days to, like, not feel like that grief from losing Kona wasn't weighing me down.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so I'm like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, you got this. I'm like, sometimes it's like, no, you don't. And it's okay to not, right? And that's like, if a dog, that's not like, you know, a loved one or a parent or a child, but it's like when I'm going out on these runs, I listen to music, I'm not allowing myself the opportunity to think, like, to free think and to be. And I think that's also like why, you know, having, like, when you get stuck in your own head or not in your own head, right? Whether they're good, you know, if you're having bad thoughts and a bad day, like, maybe you want to turn on the music, right? Maybe you want a little bit of a distraction. You want to do something for yourself. You don't want to be alone. You have the same time, like, getting with the group like that. A lot of times that's what you need. Because even if you're not speaking, even if you just can be around and see the energy of someone else, I know it sounds, you know, odd to say this way, but like when you can see and witness someone else willingly suffering, it gives you like an energy and a power, not because they're getting weaker, but because you see them doing the same thing that you want to do and are trying to do in the moment. Whether that's silently, right? Like, you can ride for 3 or 4 hours and not say a word, you know, but you have some people that want to talk the whole time and work through things and talk. And like, that's something that you would never do for a lot of us, right? We train alone, and you have these athletes, and I have these athletes too, like that, they first start working, they're like, hey, like I know you have structured training, and I want that, and that's all great, but at the same time, like I need to be with the group a couple times a week. I'm like, that's fine, right? If you want to go to a master's group once a week and do a group ride once a week and a group run, have at it. Like we're supposed to be around people. That's a fact, right? Like we're supposed to be around people. Now, some of us need that more than others, right? Like they need people energy all the time. That's how they fill their cup. Some of us, like me, like I get asked all the time at camp, like, are you an extrovert or an introvert? I'm like, I'm a little bit of both. Like I can be an extrovert when I need to be, but it drains my battery quickly, and then I need a pretty good amount of time to like boost it back up to the top. And then if I don't boost it, like if I don't like recharge that extrovert part of me, like if I do it back to back days at camp, like I'm sure like I slowly wean off at camp, like, I go through like extrovert fatigue, and I'm probably extrovert overtraining a little bit, and because I don't have a lot of time to recharge. By Saturday, Sunday, I probably seem like I'm an introvert, but I'm not. I just haven't like nourished that extrovert part of myself enough to get my battery back up the top. But so when it comes to like, the group training and being around people, whether it's said or unsaid, it's always, I think, energizing to see people struggling, doing things that are hard, whether you're the one passing someone or whether they're passing you. It's all relative. And it doesn't all suck, but it's all work. And I always think it's interesting, right, to see, we are at the mercy of so much that happens in this world. And there's a lot of phrases out there about, like you choose, things happen to us, but it's about how you respond, and how, if you play the victim, or if it takes something away from you. And like I was listening to, I'm sure you're familiar with like Jeremy Renner, the actor, who was like basically ran over and died for a little bit by like some like big fucking snow machine over like New Year's Day. And I was listening to an interview with him, and it was like, and the guy was like, hey, how do you not be a victim? He's like, because he's like, no fucking way. He's like, I'm not a victim. He's like, no matter what happens to me, like he's like, I don't have time for that. He's like, that's not the world that I live in. And I just think that, that resonates with, I think, a lot of us as we choose to do these things that are uncomfortable. We choose to do these things, or we pay to do these things. We get up early, we stay up late, we cut out early and grab a lunch, and when everyone else is sitting on their ass, eating Fritos and Cheetos and doing things in their, in the lunch and break room, like we're trying to find 20, 30 minutes to sneak a run in to better ourselves. But we do it alone. And again, I think that's a great thing, to an extent, to do that and be able to do it alone. But I also think it's okay to need that boost of energy. I think that's why so many people come off of camp. Not I think, I know why so many people come off of camp. I don't think I've ever seen anybody come into camp and then come out of camp and then go straight red in Training Peaks.
Yeah.
Ever. And it not because they're not tired. They just come back like so energized from being around these people. It's like you're a battery, like you're a sponge, and you soak in all these people and all these things, all these great conversations. And like, I think we build ourselves up naturally and almost inadvertently by just being around people that we also, like, you share stories that are like-minded, or you challenge the way that you think, or, like oh yeah, your training has been hard too. Mine too. Cause I think like you never see that, right? Training is Strava and Facebook and Instagram and Reels and whatever kind of shit people post these days. It's like, it's all the successes. Crushed it. PR. Course this. Best this. Back again today. It's never like it took everything I needed today to get the fuck out of bed and get my run in today.
Yeah.
And it wasn't pretty, but I did it. And like no one ever posts that. But the reality is, it's for some people that's 70% of their work. Just finding a way to get it done. And so, but when I think there's some freedom too, right? And being around people that share how hard it is, or how hard life is, and how challenging things have been with, niggles or injuries or work stress or family stress. Like, man, you read the same stuff. There's a lot of heavy stuff out there. And I think the more we get into our own head, the more we kind of think, this is just me. And not like it's just me as in, this is my cross to bear, right? This is just, woe is me, and everyone else has it. Everyone else has it perfect. And I'll tell you right now, most people don't. Most people got it just as rough as you do, if not rougher. But when we get into our own head and we don't talk to other people and we don't hear that reality of life, we get further and further and further inside ourselves. We kind of like set up camp in like this, not the victim to, but like, man, my life is rough. And that just brings us down. But then when we hear other people, it's kind of like, I think this is for, it's kind of like going out to eat as a parent and you don't have your kids. And you see this toddler having the biggest meltdown ever in the lobby. And I mean, screaming, kicking, crying, you're lying right now if you say you haven't felt like energized by this, but you get kind of a smile and you're like, I get it. It's not just me, but you kind of give them this nod, like, hey, listen, my kid is the same thing. You're not a shitty parent. Do your thing. Like there's this like power in this like embarrassing situation because you're like, dude, I get it. And you feel like a better parent having watched someone else have this really like shitty, hard time as a parent. Not because you like get joy out of something, but you're like, it does happen to other people. Like my kid does do the same thing. Like, thank God it's not just me. And I think that's the same thing. Like at camp, when you start to share these stories of how life is, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like, it's not just me. Everyone else has a hard time too. They just don't write 7 paragraphs about it on Strava or Facebook or whatever it is after every single workout for me to read. I just see workouts done and medals, and I just see success. I don't see all the work that it took to get there. And so I think that kind of frees us in a way, right? Because even some people are like, yeah, I'm just like struggling like to even want to do some of this stuff and want to do it. And I push because other people are pushing. Like every time we're doing those hill repeats on Thursday. Every time I saw you come back in the hill, I was like, I'm fucking going back down again.
So, we didn't say a word the whole day, but that's exactly what I was thinking.
A single word, and I was like, here we go again. I was like, it's hot. It's like 85, 90 degrees. There's no wind, and I'm like, man, I really want to be done. And there comes Mike going back down. I'm like, well, if he's going to suffer again, I'm turning my ass around the top.
Yeah, you kept turning around, and like I'd come around the corner, I wouldn't see you, and then he'd come up from the hill, and he'd just be back down there again. I'm like, that son of a bitch, he's going. Yeah, dude, I think honestly, with regard to this camp and, people being around each other that are on the same page, I think we need that in it's sort of like always being around a group of people that, I have a favorite quote. It's if 9 out of 10 people think you're crazy, you're probably on the right track. And I think we can believe that as much as we want, but if we don't have every once in a while get a little reinforcement, like you go to camp, it's like, yeah, why are we doing this shit? And together. And I always go back to, what's the best feeling in the sport? At least for me, we've talked about it, but it's coming down the red carpet, and it's not just because, I don't know. Yeah, I guess you finished something really hard, right? And then, but that moment after you cross the finish line, when you're standing around, and we've talked about it, like nothing matters then. There's no bills, there's no this, there's no that. You just did this, and you're just like right there. And I often think that, and I talk about this shit all the time, like I'm some monk or something like that. But I'm always really intrigued by this concept of being in the moment, like really, literally being in the moment. Like right now, you've got a swim lesson coming up. Maybe that keeps popping in your head or whatever. But like, how do we I think in a lot of ways that might be, one of the biggest goals of life is to be able to be where you're at that moment. And I think that as we do, when I was talking about hills and heat, I think why I like them so much is because that really brings me more and more into the moment. You know what I mean? It's not easy in the sense where I can let my mind drift and shit like that. I have to be really kind of there and focused. And I think that's a lot of what this training becomes. And it's, if we can kind of sort of look at it like that, it really is where our goal is, in a lot of ways, is to be able to be in the moment more and not be distracted by phones or distracted by all kinds of other shit that comes in our head, because it's usually all right. We've talked about, I've talked about many times about how I've worried about some shit for like a month straight that I thought was going to happen, it never even happened. But it really took energy from me. So nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? But we can always strive to get better and better at being in the moment and being calm with what is and being okay with everything. And I think that this triathlon process is one way to kind of go about that. And if you think about it in that way more often than thinking about how, you have to, get X time at your next race all the time and being, caught up with that shit. Because as we've talked about a million times, you show up at the race, it could be raining, it could be freezing, the elements could screw you over. So then what? Your goals out the window. Are you good at, settling down and doing the absolute best you can right now?
I think that's so, I mean, I don't want to say it's so hard, but I think it's hard for a lot of us to almost, again, not to use another, a recovery thing, analogy, but that's almost like one of the things when they talk about when you're recovering, in AA in the big book, they're like, here's the steps. And it's pretty simple. You just got to do it. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Again, going back to feeling special, wait a minute, don't I need some special intervention? This is me we're talking about here. My alcoholism is way worse. My background, my trauma is way worse. I need something special. I need a trip out to Passages, Malibu, and then I need 90 days at a quiet spa meditation retreat. And then it's no, you just read this book and do these steps, and then you're good to go. And I think sometimes we let when the answer is simplicity, our immediate, desire or kind of this intrinsic, need is well, how can I overcomplicate that to where it makes it a lot harder to accomplish and feels a lot less fulfilling, versus challenging yourselves like you talked about and doing the best, like you talked about, oh, is that it? We just need to do that every day and then we're going to be better. That doesn't make any sense to me. I need this, you're kind of where's the catch? And it is a lot of us, it comes down to, how do we do these things alone? How do we do these things together? And everyone has their own perfect blend. Some of us need more alone time. Some of us need more extrovert time. Some of us, kind of have an ebb and flow of what happens. But I think it's the more you recognize that and the more you can follow those trends and also what you're going through is to remember everyone's got their own stuff. And in training, the more isolated you get, I think the more you kind of go down these rabbit holes of, again, the further you go into your troubles or your obstacles or your trauma, whatever it is, the more almost impossible they feel to overcome, and the heavier they begin to feel, and the more stressful they become. And then it just continues to weigh yourself down. And then you have this vision. You're how am I ever going to get out of this? Because, I got here, not all on your own, but I got here largely on my own, right? Yeah. I got here largely on my own. Because there's plenty of people out there who are always hey, open up to me if you got anything, give me a shout, I'm happy to talk to you. And you're but no, it's it's kind of blaming the world when you retreated yourself into this bunker and surrounded yourself, with, walls, and you're oh, why is no one wanting to talk to me? Why is no one asking about me? And then you feel worse and you keep to yourself more. And it's then before you know it, you get to this place where you're does anyone even see me? And they do, but you have, been the one that has retreated into that hole. We do that with training all the time. And we think, we can't do this or no one's going to care. Yeah. Is the truth of the matter, most of your friends and family, are they really going to care? Probably not. They have no idea what you mean. I've been doing this for 2 decades and my extended family they have no fucking clue what I do. No clue. Yeah. Half of them, they're hey, when are you going to get a real job? They say the same, and it's hard to explain, and oh, you got a podcast, everybody's got a podcast now. And then you tell them how many you done. They're oh, that's kind of a lot. And I'm yeah, no shit. It's a whole lot. But you have to do these things for you, and you have to let people in, and you have to also see other people for who they are, right? And I think we also get this vision of like everyone else's life and training is so much better than ours, and that makes us either resent them or look up to them unfairly. Right? We look up to them, and that almost like sometimes when we, I think we should always look eye to eye with everybody, no matter what, right? And regardless of height. Like because if I think if you the further you look up to someone, the lower you become. I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can, wow, they're so great. And at the same time, you're like, I can't do that. And you're like, what? If you had never met that person, you wouldn't be saying that. Right. And so when you see and you hear other people going through, these hardships and obstacles and still getting the work done, it's not that you enjoy the fact that they've gone through it, is you just kind of get a little bit of a energy boost. You're like, oh, everyone is like me, right? I'm not the only one, and they're doing it, so I can do it. I just think it's like there's a lot of confidence, and really we talk about this a lot, is there's a tremendous amount of confidence to be gained in vulnerability. And the truth is, most of us just don't open up enough. We don't share enough. We're not raw enough. We don't talk about our hardships and our struggles enough. We only mention and have our successes. The further we get down in our own head, then we get in these funky spots with our life and with our training, and we shut down. And then, I've never talked to anybody that's like, yeah, I just really shut down. But they've been like, it's great. Training's great. Work's great. Life's great. I'm just shutting down. And it's like, no, everything is not great. It's the opposite, but the more you let people in, and obviously you have to let the right people in that can kind of build you back up, or maybe even like pull you along or push you forward or walk with you or whatever it is. Like all that's available and at your disposal. You just have to be open enough to look for it. And, when you train and you get up every day, I think there's a lot more confidence to be gained from thinking like, you know what, I don't want to do this. I'm going to do it anyway. And you know what? There's probably over 1 million people out there thinking the exact same thing as me. There's more people thinking, that it's hard work and they're kind of making themselves get through the work than there are people who wake up with like a smile on their face, shitting rainbows. I can't wait. Isn't it great? I can't wait. And we all know those people who are like, what? Like it's almost nauseating to see someone smile and laugh that much. And it's not really, you're just jealous that they always have that like, cheery disposition.
Yeah.
And you don't. But more people are just like us, right? Just really trying to figure it out. Like really trying to figure it out each and every day, who they are, what they want to be, even in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, it's like, it doesn't matter the age. You got, one day you wake up and everything you thought about your life might be different about what you thought your season or your year was going to be like. Something happens with this. I especially see this with the athletes that I work with that have kids. They've got these grand plans that, and let's be honest, we're triathletes, so most of us are fairly self-centered, right? In a lot of ways. And we plan out
of ourselves.
What'd you say?
Protective of ourselves.
Exactly. That's another great. Yeah, we're very protective of, what we want versus, how that might affect everyone else. And so we have these plans and these, these things we want to do. And, I was joking with a lot of the athletes that came to the bike fit thing we did. And they were like, yeah, you talk to your coach about, a bike, or he was like, ideally you come in here and you get fit on our, on the fit bike. And then I can tell you what bikes are fit best for you. And I was like, how often does that really happen? Right. Most of the time it's like people buy a bike and they're like, hey, can you fit this to me? And they're like, dude, I can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, it's very similar to athletes that are like, hey, I'm doing these races next year. Is this going to work? And I'm like, well, have you already signed up for them? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, then I guess they're going to work. It's like we want to do what we want to do, and that's okay. And I get it, because for some people, that's like the only part of their life that they feel like they've got control over. But, going back to talking about, some of these parents, or even, people who don't have kids, like if work changes, like in October of the year before, now that races are selling out more in November, December, January, like, I got this plan for later in the year. And then something happens with the kid or with work or something happens. But I see it a lot with the parents. So-and-so's kid, because we can be both very selfish, or we just kind of like we like and what we want. But then the same, I just had two conversations this week. It's like, hey, like my kid has made this like national team and we've got to travel and this race is just not going to work anymore. But I want to do something. So how about we do this? Or they wake up one day and just realize their kid is going through something just heartbreaking and gut wrenching, and your whole world is upside down. All of a sudden, everything that you want for yourself now takes the backest seat possible, probably in even a different vehicle. And now all your energy is towards your kid and making sure they're taken care of. And like you barely have the energy, right, to train and to work out. And then you question your own motivation. Like, am I even committed? You go all these things like but it's everyone at some point has all these like, what do I want to do? Am I good enough? Do I really have what it takes? Why am I changing my mind all the time? A lot of times it just means that you're being pulled a lot of directions. You're really not sure what you want because, like maybe you're unsure. And the worst thing you can do is to force it. I'm choosing. Then the next thing you know, you hate what you're doing. Well, you don't have to do that. You can easily do something different or in a different way. And I think again, like the more open we are, not distracted, but the more open we are to listening to ourselves and having these conversations and listening to others, right? Embracing other people and their training and their life and what they do, or even they're picking their brain, like, hey, like you say like you're struggling, but your weekly schedule, like how the hell do you get that done? Because I have way less on my plate and I can't get anything done, you know? Um, and it's kind of like my new favorite athlete, Penny, at Tri Camp. She was like, sorry, I was late, but I have a reason. And I said, yeah, the reason is you have poor time management. And I was halfway kidding, but I was being for real. But I was like, we all have these things that like someone else is doing better, that instead of like resenting them for it because they're somehow better, have it easier, we could probably say like, hey, like how do you do this? How do you weave this in? How do you get this done? How do you do this, and this? Because I sure as hell can't figure it out. And it's rarely ever because their life is easier. It's more so that they've just figured out a way and they've probably talked to people who have done it or done it better. And then now they've been able to apply that to their own life. And the more you talk to people, usually the more you know.
Yeah. I just want to, I guess we'll finish up here, but I always like the recovery analogies and treatment analogies. And my dad went through it. Obviously, you went through it. And I heard recently an interesting thing, and it's kind of back to my point about being in the moment or whatever. It said, somebody was saying, the good news is there's a cure for addiction. The bad news is you have to do it one day at a time. And I just thought that was so powerful because it really does come back to it. I mean, it isn't like, when you go through recovery and stuff, you have, I just think it's all really a good, sort of thing about the human condition, right? We all go through it on some level in different ways or whatever, but you don't have a race at the end of the calendar. You're just kind of handling it every day and going through it and getting stronger and better. And that's the whole point, right? It's like you can't always have that, shiny object at the end that's going to be like, okay, I'm done. You're not done. We're not done. And we have to do this, every day to the best of our ability. And that is the process that matters.
It's so funny, like hearing you say that, talking about like your dad. And if I was, and this is just God's honest truth. If somebody would have said to me in treatment, like, hey, listen, it's kind of like the lottery. They're like, hey, do you want this lump sum? We're going to give you 200 million less, but you want this lump sum? And everybody's like, yes, yes, yes. Instead of like having it, the whole thing almost like over, the course of years, everyone's like, hey, give me the lump sum. I'm going to lose money. If someone had asked me like that first month in treatment, I'll give you 10 years of sobriety. Easy. You won't ever have to think about it, ever, for the next 10 years. You'll just walk out of here. You won't have to go to meetings. You don't have to do your step work. You'll never have cravings. You just 10 years. But then after that 10 years, you're probably going to relapse and you have to start over again. Or you can take it day to day. And I'm not promising anything, but you can take it day to day, one day at a time, do these simple things and see what happens. I would have for sure taken the first one.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Because it's almost like we don't believe in ourselves enough that we can do something so simple for such a long period of time. Even if it's the ultimate answer, not the ultimate answer, but like the answer to most of our, right? Main huge, I mean, I'd be dead in a ditch in jail or worse if, if I was still drinking. But I would have for sure taken that quote unquote easy way out, even knowing in the future it would have ended in disaster. Because you almost like don't have this like internal faith, like, yeah, like that one, that sounds miraculous and like really, really cool and like spectacular. And you're like, oh, that sounds pretty amazing. I'm all in. Like there's got to be a catch. Well, there's a catch. After 10 years, you're toast. You're gonna have to start over again. But and the other one's like, oh well, you can just do these simple things every day and work these steps and read this book and do X, Y, and Z, and you could be that way forever. But you got to take it one day at a time. It's just there's nothing attractive about it at all. There's nothing. Like there is no, it's like a selling consistency and nothing flashy. It's like there's nothing that you listen to and you're like, oh, that is 100%. Count me in. I'm in. Let's do it. When do I start? We start tomorrow. Cool.
It's like
one day at a
spending
time.
your time in zone 2, man.
Exactly. It's exactly right. Like because you're like, when do I get there? Like I have no idea. Like there legit is no end date. Like there is no, like that's the same thing with sobriety. Like there is no day of accomplishment. There is no graduation. You just get like this
you're sober now.
Yeah.
Here's your medal.
Exactly.
Period.
Exactly. That's when you slip up. And so it's just interesting to think about, life that way in training and how we expect, all these, fantastical things to happen and wish they would, but the most people, it's like the beauty, there's so much beauty, I think, in doing these smaller, insignificant things, that, it saved my life 100%. And it's, a lot of days I don't think about it. Some days I do, and I got plenty to work on. But it's also scary to think that if that was an option, that's what I would have chosen. I'm thankful that wasn't an option, because I would not have bet on myself at all. Not even close, but the more you do it day after day, the more you do bet on yourself. Cause like, that was like, that same primary therapist who was, he was kind of a hard ass, but he was amazing. He was like, he looked at all of us one day and he was like, are you going to relapse? And we were all said, no. And he said, yes, you are. And you're thinking like, what kind of support group is this? You're like, this is not what I signed up for. And he just says, statistically, you're going to relapse. So get ready for it. And he's like, I'm telling you this because if you don't think you are, then you are. But if you always think you are, maybe you'll do all the right things to never happen. But guess what? You're not even going to know that until you die. He was just like straight to the point. This is the reality. You're never going to like, hopefully you never, have to deal with it. But if you think you never will, then you probably are. And it's just, it's just weird how the mind works and the body works and how we can trick ourselves into things, but then how we, show up twice a week for 8 years. And now I've got 852 podcasts.
I know. And I think, quickly I think that same mentality applies to, being lazy and out of shape and sick. It's like you take a few days off of it, your program, next thing you know, it's a week and a month and the next, you know what I mean? It's like,
or maybe here, don't change your life. Don't get up every day and do something for your body. Don't exercise, don't do things, but here's a couple pills and you just got to come in every 60 days and we'll, do a quick little checkup and then we'll up your prescription. You can come back and do it again.
Yeah.
That's the American way. Yeah, for sure. I'll take the pill, baby. Hand it over. I would much rather do that and stay like, medicated and sick than put in a little extra effort to change my life and be, better and healthier and stick around longer for my kids. Pop the pills, baby. Where do I sign?
Yeah. Well, yeah. The obstacles are the gift. The hills are the gift.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? That's kind of what we're saying here, I think. That's what it's right there. The work is the gift.
Yeah, I like that phrase. Yeah, I mean it's not a burden. It's a present. Um, I'll leave you with one last quote that doesn't come from me, but came from a book that I read, and he just he said, I just adopted this mindset that said, no one has to change for me to win.
That's good.
No one has to change for me to win. Because we always blame so many other people for so many things, or if they would do this, or if life would do this. He just said, I just adopt this mindset that nothing and no one has to change for me to win. And so I wake up every day and I put the ball in my court. And if I want to win, I win. If I don't want to win, I lose. But it's all on me. So go out there and win. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and it's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available, Mike at c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man.
All right, dude. Check you later, dude.
Catch you Thursday. See ya.